Hi, it's Alegre with your dose of modern life. Healthier, easier, more fun. On today's show, I get to introduce you to former U.S. track and field and Olympic medal hopeful Perry Fields, a really interesting and innovative entrepreneur in the oral care industry. She has a company called Frau Fowler that I can't wait to tell you all about. And it's an interesting interview. It's a 40-minute interview. Stay tuned for the whole thing because it's so fascinating following Perry's journey from Olympic medal hopeful to really, really sick individual to almost death experience, and how she made herself well and found her calling in the process. And at the end of the show, I get to share with you a coupon code just for my listeners. So stay tuned after the music. Hi, world. I'm here today with Perry Fowler, the founder of Frau Fowler, a really innovative dental care products company that I'm so excited to introduce you to. Hi, Perry.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. So tell us a little bit about Frau Fowler for the people who don't know what you do.
Yes, we're a young company. We are making oral care products and probably will venture into personal care here very soon. We started off with a tooth powder that's edible because everything that you put in your mouth, your body absorbs, especially your mucosal lining in your mouth. It's actually 90% effective in absorption. So when people have an idea that if you're brushing with something that you shouldn't eat, you're pretty much eating it as soon as you put it in your mouth.
Well, and there's just some, like, I was actually really upset a number of years ago when I found out that there was actually plastic in a lot of dental products, the glitter that you see in some of the
Oh,
sparkly ones. And
yeah, the
yeah,
microbead.
the microplastics. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's unnecessary and, there it goes back to, who do you put your trust into?
uh-huh.
And I think maybe I'm just naturally distrusting, or maybe I just look at the back of products and go, "Oh, I can't believe people are actually like putting that on their skin or they're actually using it." Not to say that everything out there is bad. It isn't. It's just um, I started this knowing that if somebody was using something twice a day, three times a day, that you could have a really dramatic impact on their health.
Absolutely. And just to tell you a little bit about my background so you know how I found you, my dad is actually a dentist.
Yeah, I think you said
And
that.
yeah, and my background is in sustainable products. And I had a store that sold I would have absolutely carried your product if it had been around when I had my store. And I've been using tooth powders for over a decade now.
Oh, wow.
However, yeah, for a long time. However, I was having this issue that probably about a decade ago, my dad was like, "You need to have a root canal in that tooth," and I was, I'm just the sort of person who will do everything possible to avoid surgery because, why not?
Yeah.
And so I started doing all these sorts of things, and I decided that I wanted to find a tooth powder that was maybe a little bit more active than the one I'd been using, which I was happy with the one I was using, but I wanted something more medicinal.
Hmm.
And when I saw that your product, which is called Mouth Medic, when I
Right.
saw that it had cinnamon and clove in it, I was immediately intrigued because my dad used the essential oils in his practice. And I knew that they were very powerful for promoting oral care. So the other thing that I saw that all your ingredients had xylitol, which I'm a big fan of xylitol in dental products, which you can talk a little bit more about. But when I saw those two things, I said, okay, this lady knows what she's doing. I'm absolutely going to check out her product.
Hmm.
And your Mouthmatic has really helped this one too that had that I've been on this track for a root canal for about a decade now. It feels better than it did before I was using it. So I just
Oh,
wanted to tell you
good.
that.
Oh, thanks. Well, I always like to hear what people have to say about it. I personally can't use anything else. It's kind of my job to go and try everything out there. But it's kind of interesting. I mean, you've made the switch from paste to powder a long time ago, but I actually really had trouble even just like before I started with what I'm doing using powder because I just didn't really like the way that it tastes, even though I found it to be pretty much more effective than paste
Mm-hmm.
in general. And Yeah, I've had a hard time going back to using anything. Sometimes I'll dig out some little travel size paste that I have, and I'll just try it, and I just get so grossed out. I think a lot of it's just binders and the fillers. I do have pretty good dental health, which is a far cry from where I was about when I was 19.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about that because you have an interesting background. You were a U.S. track and field athlete for a long, long time. So, how did you end up in dental products?
I ate a lot of bad food, I'm telling you. I mean, I ate a lot of bread, ate a lot of sugar, like what every kid pretty much does. And but the biggest single problem was just having those wisdom teeth that were removed when I was 19.
Hmm.
I actually fell ill back in around 2004, 2005. It was right after the Olympic trials, and I really didn't know what was wrong with me. And I did have a tick bite, so a lot of the specialists that I was seeing thought it was actually just Lyme disease, and that was it. And for me,
Hmm.
it was just felt like there was just a lot of questions that were never being answered. And I'm one of these people that I will go to very far extents to try to figure things out. And I spent about 4.5 years in bed, and part of that time I was trying to figure out how to get well. And I met a PhD who did a lot of research on whole body health and in particular
Hmm.
focal infections and cancer. And focal infection is basically what happens in your mouth when you have dental surgery that goes wrong. So wisdom teeth, when you get them removed, typically you're removing the nervous system out of that area and sometimes even the blood. And so you're left with these pockets, and these pockets are susceptible to infection. And the problem is that you're just really unaware of it because there's no nervous system and there's no blood flow to clean it out. So you're left with a focal infection. And these focal infections just, I guess the best way to put it is that you die a slow death. I wouldn't say it's like a quick death.
So, you had no idea. There was no weird taste, there was no temperature.
No, no, no. I've heard people say things like they get lockjaw, or like, maybe they start feeling like their lymph nodes are inflamed a lot
Hmm.
right under their
Hmm.
chin. But as far as like
Hmm.
having actual pain, I haven't really talked to too many people that have ever really had pain
Interesting.
from that problem. And a lot of that is because there's no nervous system. And if you don't have the nervous system where that tooth is or where that tooth used to be, there's no way of actually
Hmm.
knowing that you have pain there.
Yeah.
And so that's a real problem, and it's not really talked about in the American Academy of Dentists, but it is talked about quite prevalently with biological dentists, and they're kind of a group of dentists that a lot of them are actually doctors as well. And I would say there's probably less than 200 in the United States. And then they have their academy, which is the American Academy of Biological Dentistry. And some of these guys and gals have written books, and if you've read them, you're kind of in shock about what they find with root canals and what happens as far as that whole procedure is concerned. And that's a whole nother topic that would take a very long time to talk about. But I will tell you that after I had those pockets mitigated and the infection um, mitigated, which basically means they're sucking out what looks like black oil, and in that oil is a lot of different types of bacteria. It's pretty much every type of virus that you've come into contact in your entire life. I had Lyme disease in those pockets. I had gangrene. I had different types of viruses, and once they pull that out, they suck it out. They reestablish the blood flow back into that area.
Mm.
Sometimes they get a little aggressive with trying to pull out necrotic bone if it's been infected, and what it looks like is kind of mushy and black. It's really unpleasant. And then they have some procedures where they can put ozone in those pockets, and they put a filler material that grows back in and reestablishes that blood, and then they close it back up, and you're good to go. And literally about 8 months later, I was back to running, and thinking that I was going to continue my career as an athlete.
But you took a U-turn.
Yeah, I did. I went back, and I think it was in 2010. I was at the USA Track and Field Championships, and I was making my debut from being sick for that many years, and I was back at the top, and people were like, "Hey, it's good to see you," and that felt great, but for some reason I just didn't care anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care about being there. Um, and I kind of felt like I was just pushed in a different direction at that point. I'd learned so much, and I think that happens with a lot of people when you've had these experiences that are either near death or I mean just like really life changing type experiences. Your perception of what you want in the world is very different. Um, and for me, I just felt like I had a lot to give back at that point.
Right. You want to share it.
Yeah, just because of everything that I'd learned, and just really felt like there was, a big awesome world out there that I kind of wanted to do something different. So
Well, I'm for one
yeah,
am really glad that you did.
yeah, thank you.
But totally random question. What sport did you compete in?
Oh, the 800. Yeah, I'm a sadist.
So tell me about the tooth powders themselves and how they work, because what I really look for in products and in food are things that really feed the body, and I really like that about your products. So tell us a little bit about them and how they work.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point to make because the truth is if you're using something several times a day, I think you should look beyond just what it says it's going to do on the package, right? Like so, yeah, I'm going to whiten my teeth, yeah, but what if you could use something that did whiten your teeth, but if you're absorbing it in your mouth, there could be some potential health benefits instead of the opposite, which is what I think a lot of toothpaste actually do. I think there's a problem with chemical toxicities,
Hmm.
and and this is kind of an interesting point to make. When I was sick, I can't tell you how it just seemingly allergic to everything I was.
Right.
Um, and I actually got rid of all my personal care items that if I just went and just started reading labels, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I used that, chuck it. And then
Hmm.
look at something else. And by the time I was done, I pretty much had gotten rid of everything that was on my vanity, and just kind of started over again. And I literally haven't gone back. I mean, my philosophy is still the same, and I feel that it's been a very good thing for me, especially from being so sick. I had so many
Hmm.
people tell me that I would just never get well. Um, and even people today don't believe that people with chronic Lyme disease can actually get well. And I didn't have just Lyme disease, I had lupus as well, Epstein-Barr virus. I had serious anemic issues as well. And then I had all this pathology in my mouth, all this focal infection, and I had rotted jawbone. I mean, like what could be worse other than cancer,
Yeah, you had a lot
So
going on.
yeah, there's a lot going on there. So to me, I just felt like, if my body isn't responding well to these things, I really don't need them around me.
Right.
It's kind of like how you feel about food. Like people who are gluten intolerant, they stay away from gluten, and it makes them feel a lot better, even if they don't have necessarily someone saying, "No, your labs say that you're allergic to it." I mean, sometimes you can just do the elimination diet and just figure out pretty quickly something that's really not good for you.
Well, and I also too believe that, you know, I studied anthropology in undergrad, and the fact is we just live a lot longer than we used to, and so there's just these
Yeah.
accumulations that build up a lot longer.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I mean, you're living longer, you're in a more polluted society for the most part, and you're building up all kinds of heavy metal issues, you're building
Hmm.
up toxicity issues, you're building up, different types of endocrine disruptors, which would be a lot of plastics, and, you're just a cesspool pretty
Hmm.
much. And you are the accumulation of everything you've come into contact with. I mean, it's just your body just learns to adapt, and so I think it's a very healthy thing for people to actually use personal care products that they could eat, literally, because if you are going to put it on your skin, if you are going to put it in your mouth and spit it back out, I mean,
Hmm.
the damage is already done once you're coming into contact with it. You would never eat. I don't know why people think it's okay for like people who work on cars to be, immersed in petroleum products, because you would never eat petroleum products, right? But for some reason, we think with personal care, I think we've just learned to trust brands and big business, and maybe we shouldn't be. Maybe we should put our faith more in people that are actually trying to fix some of those problems with, just getting the cheapest ingredient, and don't really care about what happens to you. Because I do think people are really sick. I think there's
Right.
lots of people who are chronically ill, and they're all over the place, and pretty much everybody knows somebody who's had cancer or some type of autoimmune
Right.
disease and has suffered terribly from it.
Absolutely. So how did you come up with the mouth medic flavor particularly?
Um, well, I did go to school for food science, and I was a double major in packaging engineering as well. And I'm not a chemist though, so for me, I started approaching all this in more of a food science kind
Mhm.
of way. And because of the issue of me being sick for so long, and then just the expertise of learning everything I could possibly learn about herbs and oils, etc., I wanted to make something that was edible, that you could brush your teeth with, and something that I wasn't going to have that, like, SLS type of reaction to. For,
Mhm.
for me, it kind of burns my mouth. So I just wanted something that was just as healthy as possible.
Well, and just so people know, SLS, sodium lauryl sulfate, and sodium laureth sulfate are are basically chemical detergents that are in a lot of toothpaste.
Yeah, I mean there's surfactants, not to say that in other products they're naughty or anything. It's just that surfactants, when you're putting them in your mouth, again you're consuming it as soon as it's in your mouth.
Well, sodium laureth sulfate, the one that ends in TH, I think we can all agree is kind of naughty because it's got dioxin in it, right? So let's take that one off the table.
Yeah, true. But going back to your point about the mouth medic, the one that you like so much, clove historically has been used for toothaches, but it's also very antibacterial. And the truth is, almost all essential oils have pretty good properties to great properties for being antiseptic,
Mhm.
antibacterial, antiviral, antifungus, antimold.
Yeah, yeah.
And in your mouth, you have more than just bacteria. It's just that it's talked about bacteria all the time because bacteria is, what creates cavities ultimately. But in our body, we just have lots of different types of infections all the time
Mhm.
floating around, whether you realize it or not. So I like the fact that we're using these organic essential oils in a content, high enough content that, yes, it's still palatable, but you're actually absorbing it, and a lot of these properties of the oils are actually anti-inflammatories as well, and antioxidants. So clove oil, for example, has the highest ORIC value, which is its potential to scavenge free radicals of any oil, or any herb, actually. So you read about, like, oh,
Right.
blueberries have this ORAC, ORAC. And you can look this up too. There's, they have charts about different foods, how it all ranks up, and every now and then you'll read an article about what the capacity is for green tea or blueberries or something like that. But just the oil itself, how pure it is,
Well,
or
and it's interesting too
how
because if you
potent
think
it is,
about
I
it,
think that's kind
you
of
think
where we
about
get the
like
magic
traditional
from,
chai, right? In
with
a
the
in a
tooth powder.
traditional society, people were drinking chai like all day long, and you think about how
Yeah,
that probably helped their dental care because cinnamon and clove
yeah.
are in chai, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's been studies on green tea too, like people who drink high amounts of green tea, that they have less caries, and it's because
Right.
green
Although
tea
that
is
means no
just,
sugar in
it
it.
has
If
that
I don't want people
natural
going out and yeah,
antibacterial
there can't be any
action
sugar in
just
the
by
tea.
drinking green tea. No, no, no sugar. Yeah, yeah. So I think that's where the magic is really just the oils. We would like to ultimately make lots of different products that have different essential oil usage in it, and try to make some really interesting. I will tell you something very interesting too. When I was sick, two things I did to get well was, one, I pickled my insides with salt, and which it was kind of unheard of back in 2003. And I wrote a protocol for salt and sea, and that's what it was called. And it was basically how you can take high amounts of salt and kill just about any infection that you have, and use the sea as antioxidant and to kind of give you some protection, because when you kill lots of bacteria, there is like metabolic waste that's associated with it. And when it builds up, it makes you really sick.
So wait. When you say salt and C, you mean vitamin C?
Yeah, vitamin C. Yeah.
Okay, because at first I heard Salton Sea, that place out here in Southern California. It's a physical location, Salton Sea.
Oh,
Okay, so you're saying
oh no, no.
salt
You would
and
actually orally take high amounts of salt in sea, and not table salt. You would use a mineral salt. I think you can get pretty sick if you just try to take salt tablets. And originally I had used salt tablets like NaCl, which is just, the pure form of sodium.
Right.
Much. And I mean, yeah, you feel really terrible when you get up to about 14 grams of that a day. But it's kind of interesting because it works. It works phenomenally well without the use of antibiotics. The
So
problem
you're taking
with
salt to kill everything, and then
yeah,
vitamin C to protect yourself from what you're.
yes, yeah, exactly.
And so
It
metabolic
works.
waste was created.
Yes, when it's called die off, and die off is usually associated with Lyme disease, and you're talking about organisms. So when they die, then your body's got to get rid of it. And so if you're like you're killing a bunch of microorganisms, you can get really sick, especially if you kill them off really quickly, because they produce ammonia when they die, which is what happens to humans too. Okay, that's the smell. If someone dies or anything organic dies, pretty much you have some of that ammonia release. So I think that's a big problem, especially when you get into taking antibiotics. So what happened initially is that with Lyme disease, I was given pretty much just like everything they could think of. They just threw every type of drug at me. Said, okay, you're just going to take all this all at the same time, and it was just done very like haphazardly. There wasn't a ton of studies on all the drugs that I was taking, and they just threw it at me. And I started into the second week of my protocol, and I just went nuts, like mentally nuts. And I thought I was gonna have to be committed like to an institution, because I was just so crazy. And I don't know if it was because of my reaction to sulfa drugs or not, but later on I had my liver enzymes tested and realized that like a baby dose for me is like a full dose for like someone who has different liver enzymes. So, and that's never done. No doctor ever, unless they're, maybe an integrative or naturopathic doctor, will actually test your liver enzymes before they give you drugs. And it really should be done. So anyway, I went kind of nuts, and then I realized like I'm going to get so sick from this, I'm never going to like make it out of it, because the damage I could feel like from taking all those drugs was just so significant that I thought, this is not the right way. And so that's kind of why I quit the conventional after about maybe 10 days. I just said, I can't do this, even though I didn't have any backup plan. It was just very like Wild West of me. But one thing with me is that I do trust my instincts on things. So, and when I do, I'm never wrong. But if I question like the way I feel about something, then I'm always wrong. So for me, instinctively, I was like, I'm just going to be like every other sick chronic Lyme person out there who's like, oh, you can't ever get over it, and you're just managing your disease. And I was like, the hell with that. So that's how I got started with the pickling, because scientifically it made sense to me. And then I also used essential oils internally, and which is interesting also because there's so much, just phooey out there, especially online, about the dangers. When you're talking about toxicity levels of essential oils, you're talking about like you'd have to drink like 6-7 ounces of some oils to actually like actually have damage and get sick. So I just really think there's just a ton of mis uh, misinformation out there. And I did take a copious amount of different essential oils to follow up after the pickling, and it worked great.
So when you had to
So that
flush
was
out this dye off, you just flushed it like through your
yeah.
intestines?
Yeah, I mean, it comes out through your skin. It
Oh,
comes,
through your
well, just,
skin.
yeah, it comes out. Just think of your detox in your body. You eat
Go
out, you poop it
everywhere.
out, you sweat it
Right.
out.
You sweat it out. Yeah.
So that's what
Did you do any
happens with.
bloodletting too?
No, no, I didn't. I did use some leeches. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't use leeches, but
Interesting.
yeah. So when you detox, that's kind of what you think of. You're peeing it out, you poop it out, you
Yeah.
sweat it out.
Yeah.
So you can get an infrared sauna and sweat it out, and you're helping open up those elimination channels.
Yeah.
You can, I wouldn't say take laxatives, but you can take some herbal, colon scrubbers,
Right.
and that'll help you go to the bathroom. And then you can drink more water. Most people are chronically dehydrated. No one ever
Yeah.
talks about it. It's actually
Yeah.
a medical issue. If you go into the hospital with anything and you're on a stretcher, the first thing they do is give you an electrolyte IV, and they do that because that's the quickest thing that they can fix first.
Yeah.
And they want to
Yeah.
make sure that your levels are good before they start doing all kinds of crazy stuff on you. And they go to the
Exactly.
next level. So
Mhm.
it's considered baseline, but you literally, if you don't feel well, you're dizzy, you have a headache, you'll go to a doctor and nobody will ever talk about, are you drinking enough water?
Right. Right.
Are your
Like
electrolytes
let's
balanced?
start there.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
it's yeah, that's kind of how I got started, and I kind of have an interesting opinion on things, I'm sure, but I think when you live through something, you and I try to talk to people who live through things, because it's that kind of experience that you can't get from school or a textbook or anything else. It's just the truest form of knowledge, if
Well,
you ask me.
I call it being forged.
So,
It's like you go through the
yeah.
fire
Mm-hmm.
and you're forged into something
Yeah.
stronger and different.
Yeah.
Because I had an experience where I was
Yeah.
told
That's a good way to put it.
I wouldn't walk again and do all the active things that I do. And anyway, long story short, but yeah, when you face down the impossible and you overcome it, it gives you a totally different outlook on life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
So you wrote a really interesting, I don't know if it was an article or a blog post about having a consumer packaged goods company and the challenges of it and sort of
Oh, it's a pain in the ass. I mean, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, there's a reason why people don't get into it, that's for sure. I will tell you, though, if that's what your question is about, just starting something like this, it did help that I moved to Colorado. I could never see myself doing this in South Carolina, which is where I'm originally from. And when I moved here to Colorado, they have a nonprofit kind of education group called Naturally Boulder. And Boulder is where I would say at least 50% of all these natural consumer product goods is coming out of. And they do a really nice job. They're supportive, and they have really good education classes about being in this business, and so you feel like you're not alone. But it's pretty tough. You're spending long days, long hours, and there's just so many things to get done, and you're always going, oh man, how are we going to afford that? Especially if you don't take money for equity.
Right.
What I've done so far. Not to say that won't change later on, because we might have to do that at some point, but it's just yet to be seen. So yeah, it's kind of it's an interesting thing to be involved in, but for somebody like me, it was kind of perfect, because one thing I really loved about packaging engineering, which is kind of a weird major, by the way, and only about 4 schools offered. I think it's like Cal Poly, MIT, Michigan, and Clemson. I think what interested me about it was that it seems like a jack of all trades type of major, where
it's very interdisciplinary.
it totally
That's
is.
for sure.
So I just thought that was perfect for me. And I never, even when I went through my majors, I never thought that I'd actually be using it because I went right into running, and then that was my life.
Hmm. Interesting.
So I never thought I'd be using it because I was like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna be an athlete for the rest of my life, which is so funny to even say. But when I moved to Colorado and then went to that first Nationally Boulder meeting, I went, oh man, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And then I won their pitch slam like a year later.
Ah.
And they had this pitch slam where all these beginning companies that are pretty much in their infancy go to compete with, like best new idea, or I don't know what they really judge you on.
Mhm.
I think it's like the
Mhm.
whole concept of what you're doing. And I'm not a great public speaker. I mean, I'll own that. Very passionate, which makes me good, but um I'm not like really smooth, as you can tell already. But yeah, I ended up winning their pitch slam, which was just way out of left field, and I just couldn't believe it. There were people that I was competing against that were doing a lot better than me at that time. But that kind of helped too because I do well under pressure, and then that put a lot of pressure on me actually winning that, because then I was like, oh man, everybody's going to be watching to see what I do.
Well,
And then
you're
I
a
was like, well,
competitor.
that's good. Yeah, that's right. But that was good because I'm not competing in running anymore, so now I get to compete another way. So yeah, but it's definitely like running a marathon. It's not overnight. Sometimes you feel like you're just working and you just don't see enough progress, so it gets real stressful too. But I think that my heart's in it and my mind's in it, and I have a lot of good ideas. And I've just hired a chemist named Eileen Coop, and she's been in the business for a long time, and feel really good about her. So so I think you should see some exciting things other than just tooth powder within the next few years here. We are actually.
Well, your tooth powder is pretty darn
Thank you.
exciting.
I think
So,
it is too, right? So I won't get too excited to tell you too much before I know too much. But we have had the interest of Target, so it may end up being in Target in February or March. And we just got into Whole Foods, and we've been in natural grocers, and we're in quite a few co-ops as well. And hopefully it will become popular enough that we get into places like CVS and Walgreens. So it's a long journey. It won't happen overnight, but I do think it's, if I step back and I go, well, I don't own that. Okay, I don't own that company, but if I'm looking at everything on the shelf and everything that I've tried, I do go, man, that's pretty good stuff. I can be proud of that.
well, and hey, I've been raised around oral care, and I think it's the best
Yeah.
stuff I've tried. So,
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
so
So how does your dad feel about it?
I haven't shared it with my dad. Funny enough, I
Yeah.
probably should. I just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand. I grew up with my grandfather was a physician, and all his brothers were physicians. And I remember when I was getting healthy, and my grandfather was always asking my mom what I was doing. And my mom, like, he was like 90 at that time. She would just say, "Oh yeah, her doctor's doing really well for her." But because she did not want to tell him that
Right.
I had basically had fired everybody, and I was just going out, and doing my own thing and getting well. So even when he passed, he still did not know. She didn't want to upset him because he's kind of old school. So that was the whole point. My mom did not want to upset her dad at 90. Yeah, yeah.
Right, right, right,
So she,
right. Let him let him be in peace, Perry. No, I don't actually. I think my dad will like it. He liked the other tea powder that I introduced him to, and I think as soon
Mhm,
as he sees cinnamon clove
mhm,
xylitol, because
yeah,
he had shared
mhm,
with me some ADA articles about the benefits of xylitol on preventing caries when
yeah.
my child was young, and
Yeah,
so
yeah, and
her
and
toothpaste
and
has
and
always had
another
xylitol in it,
interesting thing
and
to
she has
say about
zero caries.
pregnant women is
Um,
that there was a study about women who were chewing gum or mints that had xylitol 3 times a day versus women who were not had their children were born with significant less dental problems from like age 1 to 5, or like from, yeah, it's like from 0 to 5. So their teeth, once their teeth came in, they had
Hmm.
significant less problems. So that bacteria is carried in vitro, and that's something that you don't really hear too often. But the health of the mother and what they're doing for their personal hygiene actually affects their children in the womb. Yeah, it's kind of interesting
Yeah, absolutely.
that I read that. We're actually making mints here next month, so that's our new thing. We're making a kind of a, I don't want to call it an herbal mint, but it's kind of seems like it's going to be a little herbally, and you get kind of the benefits of some of those herbs and that you're absorbing them. And you
What about
know,
a gum?
yeah, I want to do gum, okay, but I gotta, I gotta go the next step first. The
Oh, okay,
next
yeah,
step
yeah,
is
yeah.
gonna do the mints, and then I would love to do a gum, eventually, and that had
Well, totally
some
random
benefits.
idea.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer that we just, because we walk with shoes and because we're not interacting with soil as much,
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
humans aren't getting access to a lot of minerals that we would get if we were in contact with earth. And for that reason, like my soap has clay in it and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
But it's
Mhm.
hard to, it's like there's really only one brand that I've found that I like for clay soap. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to get into that, but
Yeah. We can talk about clay.
yeah, yeah. We'll
uh,
have to talk about clay in
I'm a
another.
big believer in clay. I used clay when I was sick.
Oh,
Um, and one thing good about clay is that it actually does help mop up endotoxins from, that die off that I was
yeah,
talking
it's a
about.
detoxer. I mean, that's
So
why.
yes,
Yeah.
it is, and there's lots of interesting um, research and articles on women in different parts of the country. A lot of them, like, well, not this country, like other countries, third world countries. And when pregnant women are nauseous,
Mhm. Mhm.
they will
Yeah.
eat clay, literally. So this is something that's been going on for thousands of years, whether it's in South America or Africa, because they're getting nutrients out of the clay. I do think, I think one of our biggest problems in societies is that we're too worried about things being too clean.
Yeah.
And I used to run around barefoot and naked pretty much in the country. I grew up in the sticks out in South Carolina, and I was like naked pretty much every day, running around with a bunch of dogs.
I like how you say that, naked.
And yeah, I just think that there's a little bit maybe too much concern about it. But as far as the clay aspect, there needs to be more research in oral care for the use of clay, understanding of it remineralizing teeth because there's certain minerals in it. It's kind of the
Mhm.
same concept as the salt, except the salt, it has proven mineral content. Clay, I mean, I just haven't seen enough
Mhm.
information to actually say, oh, that's what it does. So there's that issue. But I think that there's some validity to using it as a dentrifice.
Mhm.
I just wish that there were more studies on it. Clay and clay toothpaste, clay tooth powders, and what that actually does to your teeth over time. So, I mean, our Carbon Bright has clay in
Mhm.
it. Carbon Bright's not total clay. I don't know if I'd be comfortable just doing that, but I did take a lot of it internally. Um, and yeah, there's definitely lots of benefits to it for sure. So,
Well, and I just kind of end with what I really liked about that article you wrote about starting a package goods company was how you said,
mm-hmm.
but you wouldn't trade the experiences you've had for anything because of who it's made you. And I just thought that was really beautiful because I, like you, have had a lot of different experiences, and now I'm not using any of them in
Yeah.
terms of a physical company, but I feel like I use them all the time in my conversations with people. Like I could not have this
Oh yeah, of
conversation with you
course.
if I hadn't had my
Yeah.
own packaged goods product and all the sorts of things. So
Right.
very interesting.
Well, we're yeah. Well, we're all on our own journey here, and I think there's lots of different ways to the same place. Ultimately, to the same place for a lot of people. So you just pick a path and you go down it, and you just don't worry about it too much. I mean, if the opportunity is in front of you, then sometimes you just have to take it without overthinking it too much.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what we're all supposed to do is just pick a path, go down it, and then it turns into another path, and it splits off, and then you go to the left, or you go to the right. Just try not to worry about it too much. I mean, I could sit around and be really upset about like, oh, I didn't get my gold medal, and I was young in my late 20s when I was having some of those thoughts, right around the time that I
Mm-hmm.
thought that I just kind of didn't want to run anymore. And I was like, oh man, I have to stick it out till 2012 because that's when I'm going to get my gold medal and blah, blah, blah. And now that I look back on it, I'm just kind of like, I should have quit sooner. I mean, I really should have. Like, I mean, it's okay. It's totally okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't happy. If I go back and I think about times I wasn't happy running, I would say it was like 98% of the time.
Mm.
So I feel like it served me to where I was supposed to utilize it, move on to something else, like right after high school.
Right.
If I look back and think of all the problems I had in my 20s and trying to make it happen, the more I forced to try to get there and get to that point, the further away it was.
Well, maybe you had to get that sick
So,
to learn all the knowledge that you have now.
yeah, I did. It was part of my journey. So, and I don't think I was ever meant to stay sick either. So
Right.
it was just about me figuring it out. So, but I will say if I didn't figure it out, I probably would still be in my parents' guest room right now, doing nothing. So,
Well, thank you so much for being here today. It was a pleasure.
yeah, thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I enjoyed putting it together. And I have a great coupon for you. If you go to fraufowler.com, that's FRAUFOWLER.com, and use the coupon code HAPPY, which is what my name means. Alegre means happy in Spanish. If you use the promo code HAPPY, you'll get free shipping on your order no matter what the size. So you can try her floss, you can try her tooth powder. As you heard in the interview, I'm a huge fan of the Mouth Medic tooth powder, so check that one out. And again, that coupon code is HAPPY to get free shipping. So thanks for tuning in today. If you thought the show was fun or useful, please let me know by sending me a tip through Patreon at patreon.com/Alegre Ramos. I have great thank you gifts for my supporters and look forward to when I have 500 patrons and can hire an editor to provide you with even more great content. And subscribe to my podcast wherever you listen. If you'd like to submit questions, you can email me at hello@alegreramos.com or download the free Anchor FM app and call into my show so I can play your question on the air. Until next time, be a spark in the world. Over and out.